Hey noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we're looking at another beautiful mace from Cutler. If you like knights, Romans, samurai, weapons and armor, become a noble one. Subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. As always, I'd like to say that I'm a big fan of Todd's work, so you can find a link in the description below if you want to get yourself one of these maces. So first off, I'd like to start with the weapon's specifications and tell you a bit about the weapon itself and when and where it was used and what it's based on. The mace we are looking at is the TC44. This style of mace was very common and it roots back into the 10th century, although this design specifically is more of a 13th, 15th century style, used in continental Europe, Scandinavia and the Byzantine Empire. The mace head has a weight of 210 grams, 80 mm diameter with a 27 mm hole. It was mounted on a 50 cm ash shaft. I've already talked about ash usage in the previous video about the bronze mace, so I'll refer you to that one. The more usual material for these kind of maces would be iron or bronze, but brass works just as fine, as we will see on this video later on, so keep watching. The compact, stout and solid shape will more than compensate for the softer material. At this point, I'd like to start talking about the weapon's weight and point of balance, but before doing that, I'd like to underline that I've already made a video on a different mace from Cutler, specifically a bronze mace, and you'll find a link in the description below. But for this video, not only we're going to talk about the mace itself and give you as much information as possible, but I will also use it, okay? So this is something that was requested to me. You said it could be better if I actually smash it against something, so I will do that. Stick with me until the end. As always, Todd did an excellent job at balancing the weapon, and it's a top-heavy weapon because it's a mace, so it's supposed to have mass at the very end, the business end of the weapon, so that you can deal a lot more damage when you hit with this. Of course, if you flip it around, as I said on the other video, it really feels like a very nimble dagger, if you will, or short sword. But this is not what this weapon is all about. This is a impact weapon, and therefore it needs the mass towards the end. But however, this is very well balanced, and I have to say, if we look for the balance of the weapon, it is about here, and it's still quite easy to use. The weapon is light, there isn't too much mass in here, and of course you can have bigger heads for maces. It's not like you've got just one standard measure. At the end of the day, there is a lot of personal preference that comes into play, but it does have enough mass to do its job. Something like this would hit, and it would hit hard. On the other hand, however, it wouldn't be too difficult to recover from a fully committed attack with this, because it's not extremely heavy as you would imagine, because oftentimes what we see in video games and media, this is a nimble weapon. It's not as nimble as a sword would be, but it's still not a weapon that you fully commit to a blow and then you take forever to recover from. Alright, now that we have spoken about this a little bit in a theoretical sense, let's go to practical and let's use it. On this channel, I've heard people saying that I was perpetrating a myth by saying that maces are an anti-armor weapon. But as we could see from the test today, even a brass mace can puncture very easily mild steel, and it does help us understand why heat treatment and good quality medium carbon steel would be a necessity. This of course is not a perfect reproduction of a helmet, and I will test it on more solid helmets. My guess is that if I hit my properly made heat-treated medium carbon steel barbute, this would not happen. You wouldn't puncture through heat-treated steel of the proper thickness. But my guess is that the person wearing the helmet would still feel the impact, not only because it would be extremely loud, but also because of the energy directed to the spine. Still, this can be significant if we imagine some poorer soldiers were using softer materials for their helmets, such as iron. With a mace like this in battle, I would probably puncture through. Now let's compare it with the bronze mace that I have made a dedicated video on if you're interested. First and foremost, length is very similar. In this case, this bronze example is slightly longer. But one thing that is important to keep in mind that I actually forgot to say in the previous video is the fact that you cannot really make a mace too long, because if you make a mace too long, it will require the usage of two hands, because of the fact that most of the mass is towards the business end. And the reason for that is quite simple. If you hold the mace too close to the head, then you have no reach. And if you hold it at the very other extreme, then it becomes harder to hold because of the fact that the mace has got mass towards the end. So this is why an optimal area to hold it would be right about here. We can see this with swords as well. Now we know that a sword functions the opposite way around, so most of the mass of the sword is towards the hilt, and it means that it's a lot more nimble, but you don't have much mass here, and this is why it's more of a precise strike weapon for thrusting and for cutting, whether it be a push cut or a draw cut, rather than a weapon that hits hard like a mace or a warhammer would. However, if we flip it around, we're doing the same thing. We have a mace now, an improvised mace, not very effective at that, not as effective as a mace would be, of course. But generally speaking, in terms of balance, point of balance and mass, we've got a mace. Now, let's try and hold it where the handle of the mace would be. So if I hold it over here, then yes, I can hold it. Of course, I need to be careful because this is slightly sharp. But as you can see, I can hold it. But if I try and hold it here, it's impossible. It's a matter of lever. This is the reason why maces were relatively short. Because of the fact that the mass is towards the end, it means that if you make it too long, it would become literally impossible to hold it, let alone swing it. Unless you use two hands, of course. But a mace is generally speaking designed to be used together with a shield, so that the shield will provide defense and the mace will be your 100% offense dedicated object. Having said all that, let's have a look at these two together again. In terms of weight, the bronze mace in this case tends to be slightly heavier. Of course, it has more to do with the design rather than the metal itself, although there is a slight difference and I will get back into that. These are copper alloys. One is bronze, one is brass. And they were both used in the medieval period together with more ferric sort of metals, such as iron itself or its alloys, namely steel. Now, the reason why we're still using copper alloy in the sense of brass and bronze in the medieval period, as I said in the previous video, is simply because when you have a blunt implement, it doesn't really matter what you make it of. As long as it's metal and it's hard, it will deal damage, it will do its job. And it's going to be a lot easier to make such a complex design because of the fact that you can cast it differently from steel that instead would have to be, in the majority of cases, hammered to shape. Okay, so this is my review of this mace from Todd Cutler. I have to say that between these two, I do prefer this one. I mean, I very much like this one simply because I am fascinated with bronze itself, but in terms of overall shape, I like this one more. Now, of course, you can make this of iron, you can make this of bronze, you can make it of whatever you want, and I imagine that if you do talk to Todd, perhaps it will, maybe in the future I will have him make the exact same design, but perhaps with a different metal, to see the two metals, one next to the other with the same shape, see how they perform. That could be an interesting video. Let me know if you like that, and let me know in the comments below. But I've got to say I'm very content with this. It's an absolutely beautiful piece. I love the color. I just just love the hue. Brass, it's definitely one of my favorite metals, together with iron, steel and bronze. It's absolutely beautiful, and it does give an interesting accent, particularly paired with the ash shaft and its lighter color. Also, some people in my previous video said that a copper alloy based mace, such as a brass or bronze mace, would not be a good choice. It would not work because the metal would bend, particularly if used against steel. But as we can see here, after my abuse of this mace, the shape is almost perfectly integral. The fit is still strong and tight. There is only one of the points that was slightly bent, but I've still got a lot of points to use. Copper alloy maces work well. Alright, Noble Ones, well, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember thumbs up, and if you're not yet members of this community, become a Noble One. Subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.